Hello, I'm Eric Priestcast, new Director of Anti-Fraud and Integrity at the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. And today we're going to be talking about digital identity. In a trust-driven digital world, the digital identity is rapidly developing, transforming and taking center stage across a range of identification and verification use cases, making it a mission-critical tool for customer transactions, user services, and cyber attack prevention. As the scope and application of digital identities change to suit new needs and form the heart of our digital economy, it's vital to maintain security and trust in digital identities. In this webinar, we'll be hearing from Bradley Greer, Vice President of Data Solutions and Product Marketing for NetNumber, global provider of number intelligence as a service. Now, Brad will be telling us about the 3 phone number intelligence tools needed to master digital identities. We'll be hearing about number verification, SIM swap detection, and know your customer. And Bradley will be showing his insider tips for criteria to look for when selecting the most advanced and trusted providers for these digital identity services. Well, Brad, I've given you the big build up. I hope you're ready and excited for this webinar. Thank you very much for joining us today, Brad.
Yeah, well, thank you, Eric. It's nice to hop on the phone and talk about a subject that is very close to my heart, that I have been talking and thinking about for 18 years. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. You have a heck of a bio, subject matter expert in fraud, identity data. Yes, you're working for NetNumber now, but you've worked at other firms as well in terms of experience. And of course, NetNumber is a world-leading provider of phone number intelligence data at the forefront of this for as long as you've been at the forefront of it. So in your position as data solutions and product marketing, you get to see quite a lot of what's going on around the world, because this is a worldwide issue, is it not, Bradley?
Yeah. I think of different countries every day that I sometimes can't even spell, with all the challenges and all the moving parts going around. So I really appreciate everybody tuning in. And let's just go dive right in and start talking about some, of these solutions that we're offering and what really this means.
Let's start beginning here, Brad. So digital identity. I think I know what it is, but help me out. How do we define digital identity so we're all clear that we're talking about the same thing?
Yeah, so I'm going to just pivot into a slide right here. So everyone, from the moment you sign online for the very first time, that's digital identity. It's anything about you. Anything that you key in when you sign in, anything about you. So what I've really put on the screen here is I've put on the screen just data elements that are kind of harvested and collected about you. And if you look over to the left here where I've circled off in red, these are some of the identity elements that you might key into a computer, after you sign on. The first thing you do when you sign on is you're actually showing your device, right? Then you're showing things like your IP address, because that's part of your connection activity. You're showing, you're entering things like account numbers, your date of birth, your name to register for services. More importantly, here at NetNumber, we care about your phone number. You're entering things like your phone number, your email address, any kind of contact information. Then kind of what happens as you sign on and start doing all these activities, there's things like behaviors. You're clicking on an ad, you're posting on social media, you're downloading something, you're text messaging, you're doing all of these different things. And those are behaviors that really is going towards your digital identity footprint. The world is crazy big now in activities and digital identity. When I started around 2006 in this subject, there were only 17% of the world online. Today, there's over 70%. When you think about 2006, I'm sad to say that I was old enough to use a computer in 2006, but the amount of information I was really putting out there was probably limited. It was probably limited in the way of there weren't a lot of apps. There weren't a lot of websites that I would frequently visit. There was a limited amount of social media out there. So everything about me out there in my digital identity footprint was relatively small to where, if you look at it today, I mean, all of these wonderful social tools, all these wonderful apps and all of our accounts, I mean, everything that we do is online. And so really, what does this mean? Digital identity, because everything is out there now on the web about you at any given time, there are different programs and different types of data circulating that needs to be validated and qualified. And that's in order to protect, keep you safe, to make your experience great, to do everything that it is that you need to do in a seamless way online today. So really, there are different types of digital identity footprints out in the world, and there are different ways to really develop a digital identity footprint.
Can you give me some examples here? Help me to understand in terms of who's got this identity data. Where is it? We tend to think of like the internet as being this thing that's all over the world now, but where is this stuff? Who has this stuff? Why are they collecting this stuff?
So digital identity is collected by any organization that is doing something for you on your computer. Anytime you sign on, there's a digital identity program at the companies that are facilitating those services or that web page. Sometimes they don't even realize or discover that they need or have a digital identity program. So really, digital identity is anything that you do online, and that organization has a responsibility not only to keep that safe, but to make sure that the information that you're putting out there is interpreted to protect you and harvest that. Some organizations are doing better than others if you read any kind of current event. So there are different types of digital identity programs and different types of sources that help you combat everyday use cases. And in fact, Eric, today at NetNumber, we're going to be talking about a specific type of digital identity that we're making available to the marketplace. Digital identity programs, there are types of data like device data is sometimes used for a digital identity program. That's like a device ID and location data that helps you uniquely identify end user's location to make sure that it really is the person. We're not going to be talking about that. There are digital identity programs for like document scanning, facial recognition, like all of these different things. Those are all part of digital identity programs. What we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be talking about digital identity that is facilitated by network operators. So what that is the people that give you this awesome phone and service, they're actually a big part of digital identity. Now your network operators, they have your network and subscriber base data, and it's a strongly reliable source. When you really think about this data, I've kind of put it together in a slide in three different categories, right? When you set up a service, normally a network operator, wherever you're from the world, you know the network operators in your market. Here in North America, we have AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon are three biggest, right? U.S. Cellular's out there too. UK, you have your own network operators. Every single country has their own. But here's a common attribute. Your major network operators are usually capturing some sort of identity information about you when you sustain a subscription service. So like if you're setting up a new phone line or getting online for the first time, they're capturing things like your driver's license, creating a profile, you're registering your phone and phone number, you're porting in a phone number, right? There's a lot of different subscription information when they're offering you services that they capture. Really what that leads into is them making available a matching product for knowing your customer. So you as a service provider, if you're obtaining the name, address, and or date of birth for a phone number, a lot of the network operators have now made that kind of information available to match against. And what that does is it doesn't necessarily, factor fully into a use case that, oh, this phone number has a different name or address or date of birth and being like a hard fraudulent indicator. But what it does is it gives you a way to establish trust in many of the situations. There are markets across the world that are very heavy in like family or joint subscription plans, to where there are nuances to where that's not always going to be 100%, but it gives you a credible source of truth on the way the subscription was filled out early on. The second type of data that's really offered through network operators is based off of the activity of the network operator interconnecting the device with a phone subscription service. So what happens when when you sustain a service, you buy a phone, you link the device to the network to connect the device, right? Or you can buy a phone, bring a phone, port it into your network, all of those different things. You're connecting that device to your subscription plan and your connection. So what really the network operators have come out with in multiple countries is they've come out with something called SIM swap detection. Many of you, I'm noticing on the call today, might be pretty familiar with SIM swap detection, but really what helps you answer is the question is, has the service connection recently switched devices? When was the last change? Network operators are making that more available to look at and help solve puzzles in the digital identity. Then the third one is a network operator is managing all of the network activity of the subscriber. So there's a lot of rich I call it metadata. There's a lot of rich metadata there that tells you if it's really that person. I mean, if they're actively on a device and they log into a website, that's connection activity, right? So really what we're talking about by network operators today is really number verification. Helps you answer the question, is the user currently connected on the other end of the device? And so really there are other digital identity data elements that are available by network operators, but really that's what we're talking about today in Relevance to Net Number.
I think the most popular in terms of like these anti-fraud features that have evolved in recent years.
Yeah. So they're actually very mainstreamed. A lot of the network operators are starting to kind of collide and making these services available in several countries around the world. This has really been an uptick maybe over the last 6 or 7 years. I mean, we see a lot of especially the mobile network operators popping up with this service. The challenge for them really is this isn't their predominant business, right? Their predominant business is servicing telecommunications, and connectivity. But what they're realizing is integrating the services actually helps protect their subscribers and end users a lot better, right? By providing this to enterprises, other telecoms, specific industries around the world, it really helps keep their subscribers safe from fraud. A subscriber that has been a victim of fraud or anything like that, it can sometimes, lead to other turmoils like, oh, me in North America, Eric, I might be like, okay, you know what? I'm getting all these spam calls. My phone number's on the dark web. Somebody's taken over my account, or I'm switching from AT&T to Verizon. So by network operators making this type of service available in their country, it's very important because it keeps their subscribers safe and also creates loyalty.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with something like SIM swap detection, typically the businesses that push for this early on are banks because they're concerned that somebody's making a big transaction, but if the SIM has been replaced very recently, well, it may not be the real customer. It's somebody who's taken over their phone account. So it's a service to the bank, but it's also a service to your customer when you're the mobile network operator, because you don't want them to be upset. And also, you don't want them to lose their phone service either, because when they've lost their phones, so you want to try to reduce the chances of them being a target for these kinds of fraud.
Exactly. So there are, and fraud is one use case. There's some other use cases. We'll get into that here shortly. But yeah, so basically digital identity via network operators, just to kind of wrap up this slide, is really they're making data services available and interconnecting based off of the subscription and network activity of you as a subscriber. And some of the reasons to do that is to eliminate friction across workflows with companies and brands that you engage with on a daily basis. Banks being a big one, right? Kind of e-commerce, anything enterprise really. They're making the service available to protect you as a subscriber, and to also to cut out, a lot of the bad actors that might be lurking around behind your identity or behind that subscriber network. So you'll notice as we continue to dive in a little bit, there are some real details or use cases that really we don't have to go into great detail about, but just think about some of the questions that they solve. So up here, Eric, so really digital identity can be combated for many things, right? And we'll continue to go into those, but really I want to start with these questions. So all of you joining in today, you might be in product, you might be in sales, you might have some sort of background in data, in telecom. So what digital identity really focuses on is these three high-level use cases. You have onboarding, you usually have a verification process, and then you have a mitigation process, and that's kind of where the fraud that we were talking about rolls into play. So let's think about this from a storyline. So Eric, I'm going to pick on you. I bet you in the UK, you've downloaded an app to buy something and have it delivered to your house. I'm just going to take a wild guess. Have you done that, Eric?
I am very reluctant to download those apps, but yes, for the sake of argument, I may have once in the past done that.
Okay, so now think of the company behind there. Okay, like me, I've always been obsessed with the data and the product, right? I set up a service. What's the first thing that you just did? You downloaded the app, you're providing me with information, right? Well, me and product, Eric, I don't know anything about you. You have a very unique last name. I could probably Google that and learn a little bit about you, maybe, or maybe just what you wanted to know, and maybe what I needed to know are two different things, right? So, really, that onboarding use case in digital identity is the big question, us as service providers, is what do you really need to know about the end user, right? Are you downloading that app, Eric, because you want food delivered to your house in 2 hours? Okay, then that really sets the footprint of what I need to know about you. For one,
and sadly, you found out my guilty secret. That's exactly why I did do it. Yeah.
So I found out your address formally, right? I want to verify that that's correct. If not, I have overhead and cost logistically. What if I deliver it to the wrong address, right? Or what if you've moved and you, for whatever reason, auto text keyed in the wrong address, right? That's something that I would need to know if you were doing a food delivery service. I might also need to verify things like that it's really you. A fraudster could just be putting in your name and doing a different address because they stole your credit card, right? And they want Eric to pay for their food.
Yeah.
You know? And so there are things that you have to question when you first see an end user. An end user, typically a consumer, right? Can be a business as well. That's a use case, right? But onboarding really is what information do you really need to know about that person? That's really where, verification leads, right? What do you need to know about the person when you go into verification? You need to know that things like a phone number is actually really that user, right? Again, to protect from me stealing Eric's credit card at a conference and putting in his name, but changing my address to get lunch on Eric, right? So verification really it happens before you make a payment for that food, right? Maybe sometimes it can happen, in parallel to onboarding, but typically when it gets real, right? When there's some sort of escalated based off of me creating a profile, that's typically where verification comes into play. So some different ways that the MNO helps with that is again, remember that last diagram that I talked about, they have all of the activity and connectivity data. They can really help with that, right? They can say, oh, okay, Eric actually is on his device right now on an app trying to order for food, right? So again, it's another layer in the digital identity program that we can really leverage and monetize and help make sure people are safe and make sure that their transaction goes as planned. And then the third use case really in the journey that we always question, well, we have all this data now about someone, and this is the scary part. I talk about it in every webinar, and guys, sorry for being redundant, but when your data is out there, it's really easy to get breached. There are so many data breaches right now. I mean, gosh, in North America alone, I've gotten, 8 emails over the last 4 months about my data being breached. I like to order a lot of online food. Don't tell anyone. But what happens is because you have this sensitive information about someone and you've even verified it, becomes more vulnerable or susceptible to fraud, right? Because fraudsters know that you've collected it, you've verified it, right? Well, you have a responsibility as a service provider to really mitigate against fraud and keep it safe. There are ways to configure the end user journey that really you can use the same services and onboarding and verification that you can use to mitigate fraud. It's important to keep those services continuing through the user journey. Just like, Eric, you might have had lunch and you didn't order a big enough salad. So you're like, that salad was awesome. I want to go back to the same place for dinner. Well, you're logging in again, right? Sometimes fraudsters target you after your initial purchase, right? Because they saw that it went through. They know what card you use and they have the card and all of those things. Well, you're going back into the app to make another purchase. So that's where mitigation really comes into the journey. So really these are, and I have it all circled off because it's a cycle, if you change your phone number or your address on your profile, it kind of shifts back to re-onboarding, right? Re-verifying and then re-mitigating, right? So it's a cycle that continues on and on and on. And that goes to where I was talking about digital identity. So much more is out there about us. Think about this process through metadata that's not as simplified as what I've went into so far. If you're storing data about someone and they're actively trusting you with that data and using that data for a service that you provide, you really need to mitigate for it. You need to keep it safe. If it changes, you need to revalidate it. So again, all of this is cycle, and it's all about running a successful digital identity program. So
this has all got a cost. This is all an extra burden. How do you do that efficiently? How do you do that effectively, getting the right level of protection in place?
You know what, Eric, the beauty of that's where NetNumber comes in. We have 20 years of experience in phone number intelligence, right? Digital identity is now becoming available at NetNumber, which I'm really excited to announce because it's my background. And here's what you guys don't know. NetNumber, we already have all of these different products and services. I've been using a lot of these my whole career. And they're foundational to getting MNO digital identity data to really work. We already have our services that I've mentioned in many webinars and many presentations and with many people on this call before. We have our Carrier ID product, which is really your number portability, number lookup, works anywhere in the globe. We have Number View that captures changes in operators and line types. We have our Number Check service, which really gives you connectivity insights, right? It gives you a confidence index, 0 from 5, if a phone number is valid and reachable. We have Number Risk that can tone into things like scam likely behavior with a phone number. We have Number Watch that actually monitors for changes in operators. Those are all valuable tools that are more foundational, that our new services, KYC matching, SIM swap detection, and number verification help amplify. Now you can get them all from place, right? What this does is it still gives NetNumber the grasp to tell you everything you need to know about a phone number. Now we're telling you everything you need to know about a phone number and also giving you insights to the identity. And that's all with real-time APIs. So the way that we're positioning really these three new services, these three things that impact a digital identity flow, is we're offering in 12 countries with over 40 network operators. So think of all the big countries in North America and Europe, and we're starting to look at more. We're putting together this program, and we're noticing that there's been such an uptick and a demand for these services. We can't go without integrating them and really bringing those into our already rich ecosystem of phone number intelligence. So the exciting news is we have KYC matching, SIM swap detection, and number verification across 12 countries with major network operators. There's more coming. We're already starting to kind of test, some of the use cases and high level information that I talked about on the last slide. So,
and what does a business need to do to start the process of a conversation with you about accessing, using this intelligence in the way that you're describing? Really,
it's just reaching out to that number. I mean, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can submit a web form. We're equipped to answer any kind of question that you might have. Me being our VP of Data Solutions, I'm probably going to be involved if you reached out. So
you make it sound like it's very out of the box, that in terms of it's there and it's ready to go in those countries and those specific examples, and is in the pipeline for other countries too. Is that fair to say that it's very much out of the box in terms of doesn't need a lot of modification configuration?
Nope, it's a REST API. You call it when you need it, and if you kind of lay out to me your journey and your challenges, I've plugged and played it hundreds of times, guys. I'll help you plug and play it where you need it in a cost-effective way. The thing about it is if we go back to that slide, you're seeing this and you're like, Brad, you're saying call this 9 times here, here, and here. Depending upon your journey, there's a seamless way to do it. There's a cost-effective way to do it. NetNumber, we just humbly lay out everything on the table and help you figure that out. And that's really why I came to NetNumber, is I've been doing it for so long. It's like I've been riding a bike for so long. We can figure it out together. So me and the mishaps that I've heard through not having these services is greater than the mishaps that I've had with integrating these services, so to speak.
I don't know if you want to elaborate on those other mishaps there at all, Brad.
Yeah.
In terms of like what can go wrong if you don't start to take advantage of this intelligence.
Yeah, and that's really leading to my next slide, Eric. So you're reading my mind here. Really to just talk about solutioning and kind of to piggyback off of what I said. NetNumber, until me calling it out today, could tell you everything important that you need to know about a phone number, right? Us moving into to digital identity gives you a broad array, right? So these are the 3 key use cases that we're defining in digital identity. We have our account takeover detection. Well, to kind of give you an example of how they complement, most of our clients are already running Carrier ID, which is our number lookup service. It's global, works anywhere. It will always spit out a result, right? Account takeover is really when somebody obtains your login credentials or your identity information, and they take over your identity and they make transactions, they steal bank accounts, they drain things, right? This happens all over the world. I mean, if you Google account takeover, you're going to find some pretty scary stories, right? Well, really, Carrier ID gives you the operator, right? If you don't know which operator to send over to SimSwap, how are you going to get SimSwap data? Right?
Yeah.
So you're going to have that plugged in earlier on. Now, I will say what happens is because SimSwap is more focused on the device, we have number view, which is focused more on when a phone number ports, right? When it changes that operator.
Yeah.
Well, normally, if you think about that story, I'm a fraudster, Eric, and I want you to buy my lunch, right? So I go on the dark web, I get your login credentials to your favorite food place that you stored your payment information. I log in as you. Let's say that food place doesn't have number verify, right? Well, or let's say that it does, and I fail number verify. I might say, well, I also, on the dark web, I have his login credentials for his phone subscription account. There's this, relatively small operator over in the country that doesn't require a driver's license, doesn't require identity information. I can create an account online. I then opt to I convince your subscriber, because I have all of your information, I convince my new subscriber or my new operator to move your line over to me. Now I have full control. Now I can order all the food I want, Eric. If I don't get caught because I ported it to a new network, and the likelihood of me getting caught is a lot less because you're just going to wake up and your phone isn't going to be working, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to be confused. I might also have your bank account credentials, and I might just say, hey, thanks for your payroll check, my friend. I'll take it, right? There's a lot of different things that can happen with the account takeover. What really SimSwap is doing, and paired with our number view, is it's telling you that the timestamp that happened. And we'll say SimSwap, they're 99% of them, same with number views, porting history events, 99% of them are completely legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
But just like everything else, the devil's in the details. That 1% can ruin someone's life. That 1% can cost you millions of dollars. That 1% can completely damage your reputation. There's a lot of things that can happen. So really, I'm just highlighting that story. Fraudsters, if you think like a fraudster, yeah, they're going to SimSwap. They're also going to move your phone number to another network because that's going to confuse you more, and it gives them longer time to commit fraud and log into all your different types of accounts. Order my lunch while I'm wiring out all your money, I guess, Eric. Hope you got a lot of both, because I'm hungry and I want money.
But by combining these forms of data together, you're reducing you're working in the opposite direction to the criminal who wants to break up the world into segments and silos so no one detects what they're doing. You're pulling the picture back together again to counteract them in that way, aren't you?
Yeah, so as a service provider, if you see some suspicious activity and you have a SimSwap import date, and let's say that the end user is wanting to change their mailing address to receive lunch, or in order to complete a wire, or they somehow submit, a new imposter driver's license, or something changes, that's when account takeover, SimSwap and number view hits can either make you trust your end user more or distrust. And so that's the way to think of the service.
It's a fascinating way to look at it.
Yeah. So next is user onboarding. So we have our number check confidence index. So really just thinking about that by way of onboarding. That tells you if a phone number is valid and gives you a confidence index on if that phone number is reachable, right? What that leads to is that is kind of your first stab. Now, let's say that during onboarding, Eric, you want to send me some money through a Cash App. Number check is going to be a really cost-effective way to figure out if your phone number is active and my phone number is active, right? However, if it's not active, you're not going to spend the money to do a number verification, right? So number check really helps you with onboarding early on. It gives you that confidence index early on to know whether or not, so when I was talking about making it cost effective to your journey, I mean, a lot of companies, and I've onboarded several of them myself, they're using number check before that number verification, right? The number verification becomes more authoritative. And that's to protect the end user on their onboarding. And that's also creating a seamless onboarding process, right? Because number verification, you do have to call an API. You do have to get confirmation from the network operator, right? That phone number is currently being used by that user, right? Well, number check, if it's not valid or it's not active, you might just not even go all the way to that level. You might ask the user to either provide a different number or do something else, right? You might even lock down that account, depending upon what it is, right? So really what it does is us building a journey, a cost-effective way to do this and mitigate this is why we're offering it. We have the capability to do that. Then the last use case is really identity fraud prevention, and that's where all the scary stories, but most interesting stories come from, right? Carrier ID, again, I mean, this is we've had this product, we've onboarded everywhere. We know code range, we know number portability, we know all of these things about the operator and line type. I mean, that if you have suspicious operators in your market, that can tell you something. The way that I've always thought of it in fraud is I've thought of it in a specific country. I think about the onboarding process that a network operator uses to onboard their subscribers. And I kind of rank those. I usually rank those from like a 1 through 10. Oh, wow. This one requires you to go into a building, captures your fingerprint. I mean, there are some in India, fingerprint is used as part of the national ID, right? Really, there are different operators that have different onboarding for a subscriber that are more authoritative than others. What I do is I kind of use carrier ID in that way as I'm seeing it with my end users. And I think about, okay, do they just sign on a website and type in their name and I don't do and they don't do any kind of validation check, or are they using a fingerprint? Are they using facial recognition? Are they creating a passcode, to port the number, or what exactly are they doing? That is how I use carrier ID foundationally in a fraud use case. And then really, KYC matching on top of that gives me the peace of mind, right? If I can match whether 100% of the name matches what the user, how you gave me your name, Eric, tells me a lot. Same with your address matching your subscription, where you get your phone bill, where you had your phone that you ordered sent to, things like that in the subscription data. And then also your date of birth or your birth date, right? That being able to match sometimes can even pass off as some age verification use cases that help prevent fraud. online gaming, they have a lot of challenges verifying people's age, right? Sometimes this service is integrated there to help that. Not for every use case, can't be, but it sure can help when somebody provides you something and you definitely know it's not right, right?
Yeah.
So really with solutioning, that's how we're positioning these three services is really we have ecosystem level data that tells you what you need to know about a phone number. And now what we're doing is we're helping telecommunication providers, any kind of communication service provider, enterprises, financial institutions, everyone. We're helping them with the digital identity footprint because we know that everybody is using one of these to make transactions, to create accounts, to do every single thing in their day-to-day life now. 70% of the world is online. Out of that 70%, about 65% are using a smart device. So this is growing, and it's growing at least 5% year over year. And so we know that these two complement each other, and we want to make sure that we start packaging it in a way that truly solves the problem.
The word packaging is so key there, isn't it? It's about taking these different strands and pulling it together and intelligently exploiting the information for a good reason, for a good purpose that may not be immediately apparent to everybody in the ecosystem, but pulling the thread through to see the connection, to see as much as possible the person behind the phone. It's fascinating the way that this has evolved over time and the thought process, Brad. And I'm really glad you've had the chance to share this with us. I am conscious of time as well, though, Brad. So I know there's going to be people watching who have more questions and want to hear more about how this works in practice. How do they do that, Brad? How do they reach out to you and find you?
Yeah. So everyone, my travel and event calendar is full. So these are my 3 events in October. So those of you attending Mobile World Congress, you better reach out to me. I want to have in-depth discussions about this. I'm also attending the Communications Fraud Control Association fall session. That's a working group. I know many of you are starting to tune in to some of the MEF webinars that we have going on. I would love to meet with you there. I'll also be at Money 2020 because Money 2020, there are so many organizations that really need help with digital identity. And these 3 events are right up my alley to talk about these services. In addition to that, find me on LinkedIn. I mean, even if you just have a small question, I'm pretty responsive there. You can visit our website. We're getting ready to post all of our services on our website. We're doing some updating right now. In addition to that, I mean, you can even fill out a web form. So whatever way gets you to me, let's have a discussion. This is a very important topic and it impacts all of us. And we really want to be at the forefront of it and help everyone scale. That's not only, to make revenue from the service, but it's important. And these 2 items complement each other, right? They're truly important to keep people safe and to keep us all thriving and growing.
It's an important service, and I thank you, Bradley, for your part in making these services available and for taking your time to explain today. I'm sure there'll be lots of people getting in touch with you. Unfortunately, that is all we have time for today. So we've been talking with Bradley Greer, expert in fraud and identity data, Vice President at NetNumber, Global Providers of Number Intelligence. I've been your host, Eric Priestkans. We'll be back with another Mobile Ecosystem Forum webinar soon. In the meantime, let's be careful out there.